Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Your Mark on the World show. I'm your host, Devin Thorpe, and our guests today are some wonderful women that I've come to know. They're doing some amazing work. Merrilee Buchanan is the founder and principal consultant at Villa Leadership Group, and her partner, Carol Storey, is the founder, co-founder, co-author, and photographer for the Villa blog. They're both licensed clinical social workers, both amazing human beings. We're talking about how they are working to help women around the world. And so stick around. You don't want to miss this.
Welcome to Your Mark on the World, bringing you another change maker with champion of social good, Devin D. Thorpe.
This episode is made possible via the support of our sponsors, including Johnson & Johnson's Caring Crowd. Merrilee, Carol, welcome to the show.
Hi, Devin. Hey, thanks for having us. Yes, we're excited to be here.
We are thrilled to have you, and thank you very much for making the time to join us today. You really are doing some amazing work, both here in the U.S. and abroad, and so everyone is eager to hear your story. But Merrilee, maybe you would just take a minute and tell us a little bit about Villa Leadership Group.
Sure. So Villa Leadership Group in the current iteration has been around since 2014, but it actually started earlier than that in 2008 as Chocolate Villa. And there's a long story to that, but I won't take time to do the long story. But it was started by 5 women who said, we need to look at how we're developing women leaders. Because as women in the workplace, as professionals, women were not really amplifying their authentic strengths. And we could see that many women would come into the workplace and act like men, because that was the model that we had. And so we began we started our own model. We spent a year developing this model and testing it. And it's really a workshop-based model for the most part, in which we help women really see their own strengths, increase their aspirational thinking, and see their own possibilities and their own potential, and then gain the confidence and the skills to be able to be better influencers in their worlds, whether it is in the workplace or in their communities or in government, wherever. So it's while I hate to use the commonly used word empowerment, it's really about helping women find their own voices.
It's wonderful work, and it's so important. Carol, tell us how the Villa blog fits into this overall strategy.
Well, first of all, let me just give you a little history of how we came up with this. With the blog idea. So Merrilee and I go way back. In fact, we grew up in the same neighborhood here in Salt Lake City. And, I knew of her. She wasn't a close friend. Her older sister was my age. And so I kind of, we were aware of each other, but not close friends. And then fast forward, 35 years, I showed up I was in graduate school, the School of Social Work, getting a master's degree. And in that program, we do internships. They're called practicums. And I showed up for my internship, which was at a mental health facility in Park City. And I walk in, and there's Merrilee, who I have not seen.
I was working there.
She was working there. She already was an LCSW, a clinical social worker. And so, I walked in, and she looked at me, and I looked at her, and I'm like, I know you. Mm-hmm. And it didn't take us long, and we realized that, who we were. And so then I spent 4 really fun, talk about fun. She's hilarious. And I worked there for 4 years with Merrilee. And so, we were both clinical social workers, and then I left. Meanwhile, and I came down to Salt Lake, and I was working in another agency, and Merrilee started Villa Leadership Group. and we would get together maybe once a year for lunch, and I would hear about this really cool thing she was doing, and I was just intrigued with it because number one, I love any sort of work that includes helping people. It's why I went into social work. And two, she was traveling a lot, and I love to travel, and she was meeting women from all over the world and, doing all this really cool training with them. And so one day we were having lunch, and meanwhile I had really developed an interest in photography. And I love photography because it's just, it tells stories, it's beautiful. And one day I just asked her, I said, would you let me just sort of tag along with you to one of your little trainings? And I'll just take photographs. You can use that on your website. You can use whatever you want. And honestly, she looks at me and she says, I have a better idea. And then she says, I want to tell stories. I want to tell stories about inspirational women. Would you be interested in doing something like that with me? And that's how it started. So we started brainstorming, and we came up with this blog idea, and we spent a good, year
Yes.
kind of developing the ideas that we had, and we launched about a year ago. And since then, I have gone with her to England. We were in Africa in December. She's doing her villa leadership workshops, and I was there working on the blog, and it's been so much fun to collaborate with her.
Merrilee, I wonder if you would take us to London and Africa, and talk about how you apply your leadership training in those two fairly disparate communities. What's the difference? How is it applied? And what are the outcomes that women are seeing in those places?
So Devin, what we do is, our model is about facilitation. It's not so much training, although we have a lot of tools. And what we have found is that no matter where we go in the world, women share many of the same issues, many of the same challenges with managing their work and their career lives and balancing it with their lives and their commitments to their families and their friends and their communities. And then how do they develop themselves at the center? And so whether you're in London or whether you're in Nairobi or Johannesburg or Thailand or any of the places that we've been, we find there's this common thread. And so what we do is we take our workshop and we work inside of companies or organizations. So some of them are nonprofits, some of them are corporate. And our goal is to help women find a way to manage and prioritize and deal with their lives. So we use a lot of our tools of emotional intelligence, our tools of understanding the changing dynamics of today's workforces, and then developing their own leadership styles and skills. And so when we go to these places, we really are doing the same program with different groups of women. But they're professional women who are all committed to saying, I have something in me that I can share, and I have capability and the ability to influence, and I may not know exactly how to do that. And how do I navigate through the cultures of their workplaces or the cultures of their communities? And so it's different in every workshop, but it's the same, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Carol, as you've traveled around with Merrilee and you've been talking to these women, what are the commonalities Merrilee mentioned that you see, whether you're in Thailand or Africa or London? What are the things that women have in common?
This is why I love traveling all over the world, because you find out that we're all more alike than different. And yet there are still differences, which we like. Diversity is really important. But this last trip to Nairobi was really, how do I explain it? It was pretty special, for me anyway, because we were working with women who manage humanitarian food programs for the United Nations World Food Program. So these are women who are in Africa, and they are, Africa is, I've never been to Africa, first of all. So that it was such a different kind of culture for me to experience, and I loved it. And these women were just, they're already very, accomplished, but they work under the radar. You don't hear about these women who are doing these amazing things, delivering food to the most vulnerable populations. And yet, with all of that, so I'm like really inspired by these women, but we also know that we as women, we have a lot of the same kind of needs. And one of the things that we all do is we view our entire world through the lens of connection. And whether we're working at our job, whether we're volunteering in, at a community or with our own families, we are always thinking and devising strategies and making decisions based on the people, our relationships, the people that are around us. And sometimes we get burned out, because we are, women are caregivers. And so what I found is that, all women, no matter where I've been, sometimes we don't know how to take care of ourselves as much as we take care of everyone around us. And so that's one thing. I mean, there's many things, but don't you think that's one of the,
yes,
a commonality that women from all over the world that we all share, and whether that's biology or whether it's been, it's cultural, it's environmental, it's probably a combination of both. Mm-hmm. It seems to be something that we always are trying to balance, or trying to even find time for us.
It is that. Yes. Oh, I was going to say, just to add on to that, it is that women tend to take on a lot, right? And so we carry the burdens both of our workplaces and what's going on there, and for our families and communities. So we do see that burnout, that fatigue. That's a very common thing we see everywhere.
And Merrilee, how do you counsel women to cope or overcome that? How do you manage that?
Well, we help them step back from their life and re-examine their priorities and how they define success. Because sometimes success gets defined for us. And so we have them step back and say, how do you define success in your career? How do you define success in what we call your tribe, which is your family, your friends, and your community? And how do you define success for yourself? And how do you take care of yourself at the center of all of this? And so once we have them step back, then we actually lead them through a series of exercises that helps them set more realistic or specific goals, and sometimes more aspirational goals, because they haven't really stopped to look at their lives. And that's really the benefit of what they tell us, is that they take away from our workshops, is that they've had a chance to stop and look at their life and replan and remap, so that they have the tools going forward to manage it more effectively.
Well, it sounds like those are great tools for women anywhere, right? As you point out, they face the same challenges. So that's a great counsel. What do I know? I happen not to be a woman, but last I checked. So
you're an empowered man, though. You probably know more than a lot.
Yeah, I like to think I can channel my inner female a little bit to relate to these issues, but that's kind of presumptuous. I once said, I think men like me think we understand women in the same way that people tend to think they know how to run a restaurant because they eat. It's just, it's one perspective, but it's hardly walking in their shoes. So in any case, Carol, how has it affected you to find and tell these stories of remarkable women around the world?
I just love it. When I first went to college, I wanted to be a journalist, and my first degree was in journalism, and I dabbled a little bit in it. I worked for a local parenting magazine, but then I was married, started having kids, and so then I was busy doing that, and then I have always also been really interested in psychology, really fascinated by it. So the other career I wanted to pursue was psychology. And so I eventually went back to school, and because I was fascinated by human behavior. And I got a degree in psychology, and then I went to graduate school in social work. So when we developed this blog and I started traveling with Merrilee, and I started interviewing women from around the world and writing about it, and also with my photography, it was like blending two of like my passions. I've always wanted to write. I love to write, and I love listening to especially women. I'm a woman, so I'm really into, I love men too, but yeah. But to listen to women who don't live here in Salt Lake City, Utah, in our little bubble here, and to listen to their stories and to write about it and use like my creative urge to write and to photograph. It's just been, I can't even describe it. It's just been beyond, my wildest dreams. It really has. And so that's, and again, just to the privilege of, and I find this in my work as a clinical social worker too, because I have a practice here where I work with individual people. And it's a privilege when someone allows me to listen to their stories. I just love it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I appreciate that. Merrilee, as you think about your career and the remarkable things you've done and accomplished, what's the most important lesson you've learned?
Well, I've been thinking about this, Devin, and thank you for giving us a little heads up on thinking about that. But I want to say that the most important thing for me is the learning to see things from different points of view, and especially to be able to appreciate difference. As much as we've talked about how women are all alike, we are very different as well. And by looking at difference and understanding the power of diversity, I think that is, for me, it helps me see that everybody's very unique, and there's not one way to do this. And there's no way. My friend, who's one of the founders of our Chocolate Villa, she taught me this phrase, and she said, there's no way that things should be. And as we think about that with women and men now in trying to map our lives, that there's no way that it should be, and that we have opportunities to set up our lives to work for us and to work for us all together in a global community. So I think it's that appreciating difference that is my greatest lesson.
That is a powerful lesson, to appreciate differences. Carol, as you think about, your shift, you got into this somewhat later in your career. You mentioned you started out thinking about journalism, dabbled in that early in your career. Why this? Why now?
Oh, I feel like almost that it was this, cosmic. It just happened at a time in my life when I was searching for something more. Not that I was unhappy with, I love my work as a clinical social worker. And I've always felt that one-on-one work is, even if, I always have this belief that if I die and I have helped just one person, I've lived a good life. And so I get to do that every day in my office with my clients. But I needed something more. I just turned 60. And that's kind of a shock. It's a pretty big transitional time in our lives. My kids are grown. I have a grandson who I adore. But, I'm not doing that anymore. And I felt this need to expand my world and to really explore my creative urges. I've always been drawn to, like I said, I read, I don't know how many books I have on my bookshelf, but hundreds and hundreds. And I'm usually reading about 5 books at one time. And I've always loved to write. And then I love music. I love art. So I'm really drawn to and nature. I love to hike. And so I started in photography, and to have this happen at this stage in my life, when a lot of women or a lot of people are like thinking about retirement, that kind of scared me, to be honest. I'm like, I'm not ready for this. I haven't done everything I want to do. And it's been such an incredible, opportunity for me at this stage of my life, because then I've also learned that you never stop growing. No matter how old you are, our development never stops. And I fully expect that when I'm 70, I'll be probably trying to do something else. And that keeps me engaged in growing in my life, and it makes life really fun.
No, that's good. I think you hit on something that's very important for all of us, right? That need to be, to find meaningfulness in our lives, to feel like we matter. So it's a powerful motivator. Merrilee, what is your superpower?
I can fly. No,
I want to see that.
I really can. I mean, I do go in airplanes, but I think it's quite a superpower to be able to fly, even when we get into that metal tube and jet around the world and go to another continent. But that's not really what my superpower is. I think my superpower, and many people might disagree with this being a superpower, but I think it's patience and perspective, because I have this, sometimes people say, Merrilee, you don't jump, and I don't react really quickly. And so the patience for me is about letting things play out and understanding that there's a process to everything, whether it's a person discovering their own light and magic, or whether it's, finding our own passions. That sometimes it takes time, and sometimes the process is messy. And so
quite often
I have, and we can talk about this with our blog, in that we've at times been frustrated and discouraged, but the patience and the long view for me is, I think, what I lean on for a superpower. Now, for people who like to make quick decisions and move quickly, I drive them absolutely crazy. And I admit that, all right? But it's, for me, it helps because I'm kind of a calm person. And I think that is what I try to bring to the table, is perspective and persistence and that long view. And flying.
Flying. Merrilee, Carol, thank you so much.
About that. Can
Yes,
I just say one thing about that?
please do.
Sorry. Okay. One of the things I think that Merrilee and I share also as a superpower is this insatiable curiosity.
Mhm.
And that drives us to keep searching for, for whatever is going to both fill us, but where we can also, give a voice to other people. And that's why we do what we do.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, Carol, before we go, maybe you could just take a minute and tell people how they can learn more about the Villa blog, the Villa Leadership Group, and how they can connect with you too.
Oh, absolutely. So you can go onto our website, our blog. It's www.ourvillanetwork.com. We're also on Facebook under the Villa, and we're on Instagram and Pinterest. I just learned. And that's how you can find the blog. Merrilee can talk to you a little bit about the Villa group,
Right.
leadership group.
Same thing is our website is villaleadership.com. It's very easy, and it gives an overview of the kinds of services that we provide. We also have a Facebook page and LinkedIn. So we're out there on all the social media. We try to stay connected as much as Carol and I, who are kind of
It's not
in
our
the dinosaur age. We're learning, but we have this young group of mentors who are teaching us all about social media.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
So that's how we do it.
Well, I thank you both for taking the time to be with us today, and we wish you every success in empowering women around the world.
Thank you, Devin.
Thanks for having us.
All righty.
Take care.
Let's do some good.
At Caring Crowd, we believe everyone has the power to make a difference. Through our crowdfunding platform for community health, we empower passionate people to drive real change. Whether you work for a nonprofit organization, volunteer, or want to get involved for the first time, you can post a campaign on Caring Crowd. Join us, because caring is where change begins.
Thank you for listening. This podcast is available at youtube.com/Devin Thorpe. Subscribe to this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes by searching for Your Mark on the World. Every weekday, Devin hosts a CEO, celebrity, entrepreneur, or other changemaker here on the Your Mark on the World show to inspire and prepare you to make your mark. Devin is a champion of social good, writing about, advocating for, and advising people who are doing good. He is a Forbes contributor who is a recognized thought leader in social entrepreneurship, impact investing, and crowdfunding. To book Devin as a speaker, visit devinthorpe.com.